Senator Caryn Tyson. She's a candidate running for the 2nd Congressional District. And yeah, thank you.
Well, good evening. It's good to see such a crowd here. I'm actually impressed. I know when I was your age, this was the last place I would be. I probably shouldn't tell that. But to me, it is so important and so critical what we do with government now. And I would ask this group, I speak with a lot of college students, a lot of high school students. And one of the questions I pose to them is, can you name one aspect of your life that government doesn't impact? Anyone? Usually that's what I get at crickets. I asked a group of adults, about 70 adults the other evening, and the same thing. It's very difficult to come up. Government impacts almost everything we do now. And so it is so important that you're involved, and I'm so impressed that you are here and engaged in the process. Well, I'm Caryn Tyson. I'm currently a Kansas Senator. I represent the Kansas 12th District, Senate District. It touches 6 counties: Southern Miami, Lynn, Northern Bourbon, Anderson, Allen, and Franklin. There's 25 counties in the 2nd District. I'm also a candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, and that's why I'm here tonight. All 6 of my counties are within the Congressional District. That may not seem like much, but I'm a numbers person. I have a math degree, don't hold it against me, from K-State, and a computer science degree from K-State, and I have my engineering management from KU. I'm a software engineer by trade. I'm not a political person by any means. But one of the contracts that I used to work on, and you guys would recognize it, it's NASA. I worked on space shuttle support. And it was my first introduction to government waste. And it sparked an interest. It sparked an interest for me to want to be involved with government. So years later, I'm working on a software contract at the state here in Kansas, and it was just intriguing to me how much waste we were doing. I had just finished working for NASA, and I come to the state, and we're doing bleeding edge technology. I mean, it was an architecture that wasn't even proven for NASA, and we're going to do it at the state of Kansas with taxpayer money. It just made me want to be involved and say, look, we can do things better, we can do things smarter. And so that's how I got into this process and how I got in government. I was the 2nd District Chairman of the Republican Party, so I'm very familiar with the district. It has been redrawn, the dry lines are a little bit different, but the majority of it is the same. So I have contacts throughout the district and have been reaching out to them for our campaign. You know, there's so many issues that are important for us, but I just told you one of the reasons that I got involved. Well, the budget, the waste, and the tax, it goes together, hand in hand. So government tax, we keep coming back to individuals, asking them for more money, actually not even asking, just taking, as government officials. Well, who knows better how to spend the money, you or government? Would you guys, you think government knows better than you do? Yeah, I agree. I don't think so either. So let's try to keep the money in the hands of the women and men that earn it, and have more efficient government. That's part of the reason I'm running. The other reason is infrastructure. And you wonder how infrastructure impacts you. Well, besides the roads and bridges and rails and all that, broadband is also infrastructure. We need broadband that is, it's critical for our rural way of life. It's critical for telehealth, for items that are our economy, for helping people get jobs, move to Kansas. I telecommuted. In fact, I lived in a small community of 200 people, less than 200 people, on a ranch. My husband and I own and operate Tyson Ranch. And I work the project deals with billions of dollars, over 45 million users from my home in Parker, Kansas. At the same time, my sister's working on a project for the Pentagon. top secret clearance from her home in Kansas. Those are jobs that we can bring here, marketing jobs. You could work from your home if we had the broadband and the infrastructure. So those are items that I want to work on. Security, IT, items that impact our daily life. So I'm very passionate, you can tell. I'm not a political person, like I said. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And I work very diligently for my constituents, and I will do that for you guys too. So I hope that you want to get engaged in the campaign and get involved. Use your skills. There's different ways to impact government. You may not be the one that's actually running for office, but you can influence them. Another story I tell you is one vote counts. So when you go to vote, make sure it's an informed vote. I have a saying, my husband says I have to quit saying it, but an uninformed vote is a dangerous vote. I had a coworker that I asked him how come he decided who he was voting for. He said he liked their last name. Well, I know you guys won't do that because you're here and you're engaged, but please tell your friends and family, make an informed vote. So with that, I'll stand for any questions. Sure.
I'm not going to ask you a harder question.
Oh, you can ask as hard as you want.
I am curious, you touched on bringing more jobs in. How, I know that Topeka is a very harsh on jobs that come in, and we don't usually let them last very long. How would you allow for them to stay longer or to stay permanent?
For jobs? What we do is get government out of the way. We've got so much government regulation and bureaucracy. We had like I said, I'm in the state Senate right now. We've got legislation that it's taking away our freedoms. It's people that are coming for bills that they think it's actually giving them freedom. But what we're doing is we're defining that, and these are, I'm just using an example, this is not what the bill actually is, but say that you want to wear a red shirt to an event, and the school's not going to let you. So somebody has brought a bill, you brought a bill that you could wear a red shirt. Well, that's freedom of speech or freedom of expression. You shouldn't need a bill to do that. It already should be free. So we really need to question what our government's for and what we're, I'm very basic on liberty, individual freedom, traditional values, economic development. That's what we stand for, that's what our Constitution stands for, and we need to protect those values.
How do you think President Trump has been doing and what are your thoughts on it?
You know, I love this question because I love what he's doing. I think he's doing a great job. We may not like how he says it sometimes or the vehicle that he uses it. I think he has to use Twitter. Otherwise, how's his message going to get out? I do like what he, especially what he campaigned on. You know, he's lowered taxes. He's trying to secure our border. He's working on trade. I mean, he's done so many things. For those of you, how many know what waters of the U.S. Okay. There was our last administration. Waters of the U.S., what it would have done was any water, pool of water, would have been regulated by our government, by our U.S. government. Right now, it's navigable. I think it's navigable waters of the U.S., and so that means it has to be a stream or something of substance. But this would have, any pond, any creek, any puddle of water, it was questioned, would be regulated by our U.S. government. So President Trump stopped that. It was the EPA that had put in rules and regs, and President Trump stopped that. He has done so many rules and regs. How many of you are familiar with rules and regulations? A little bit? Okay. I sit on the State Rules and Regs Committee, so I'm glad you guys know what it is. It has the power of law. It's our agencies and our departments writing rules and regulations that we must follow. And so it's not going through a congressional check and balance or a presidential or governor. It's just the agency and the department writing rules and regulations that have the power of law, and we have to follow them. So we've got a lot of overreach with our bureaucracy at times. And he's reining some of that in. People aren't even aware of that. So, long answer to a short question, but I like what he's doing.
I don't know if someone else, I have a long question, so short.
Oh, since you brought up infrastructure, broadband, internet, stuff like that, what are your thoughts on cybersecurity, and have you had any experience dealing with it, any experience dealing with breaches of it?
Yeah, actually one at NASA when we were there.
Oh.
It was kind of interesting. We were at work and somebody calls up and they said, I can't do X, Y, Z in the system. And we're like, you're not supposed to be in the system. So, yeah, I wasn't on that project, but friends of mine were. So one of the breaches more close to home, there was a business in Fort Scott, Kansas. FBI shows up on their doorstep, and China had hacked into their servers. They didn't know it, they weren't aware of it, and so we do have a vulnerability in this nation. Most people don't realize almost all our electronics are made overseas now, and a lot of them in China. If
And
you,
chips and passports as well.
if you look, they're not even putting the spyware in the machine, on the software now, it's in the BIOS. So, sorry to get a little bit technical, but it's in the guts of the machine. So, yeah.
So I was just wondering, so you're probably gonna say you're about tax cuts, right? In general, you like,
I'm about fairness. Yes, I like lower taxes if we can do it.
okay,
To me, we have a government, especially the state, that picks winners and losers, and that's not fair to anyone.
yes, okay. So then on my question is, so you're the chair of the tax committee in the Senate,
Yes, I am.
and so how, since you've been a senator for 5 years, how,
I've only been the chair this is my second year for chairman.
okay,
I was vice chair before.
okay. Why does Kansas still have like the highest sales tax in the region on food and one of the highest in the United States?
Great question. I have been fighting that. Actually, I was in the House before I was in the Senate one term for 2 years. I've been fighting that since I was in the House.
I mean, it seems like it should be like easy because you have a super majority and.
I'm with you. I agree. I absolutely agree. It seems like the most simple question, but it's not. We have a body of 125 House members and 40 senators, and Steve knows what seems common sense. For those of you that don't know, Steve Esau is running for Secretary of State. He's currently in the House. So we have 125 representatives and 40 senators, so it needs 63 and 21 to pass legislation that's not constitutional that's not constitutional, so, or needs supermajority. We cannot get those votes. When I was in the House, we had a bill that completely removed sales tax on food, completely. We got it out of the House, the Senate killed it. So when I got over to the Senate, in 2013 was my first year as a freshman, and as vice chair of tax, I made proposals to lower sales tax on food. The president of the Senate was actually helping me out, and we got it past the Senate. The House killed it. So we keep going back and forth, and we can't get both chambers to agree on it. I'm with you. I represent 3 border counties. We've got, I don't know how many border counties up and down the state. But it's proven the higher the sales tax, the more people leave the state to purchase their products. One of the items that I've been fighting for, and we can't get past either, is Missouri has a school sales tax holiday on school supplies. I had a legislator that told me that they didn't know anybody that would cross the state line for a few pennies. I said, you're out of touch with your district. Because all you have to do is go over on the state line and look on that weekend, and there's a bunch of Missouri tax. So I'm with you, I am fighting for that. I'll keep fighting for it. Just because you're the chair of the committee, you don't rule the world. I wish that's the way it was. This is what Caryn Tyson wants, so this is what she gets. I've got to get it out of my committee. People don't even realize that's difficult at times. Last year, we had a huge retroactive tax increase. As the tax chairman, I did not vote for that bill. I did not support that bill. It is being stated that I proposed that bill. That is not accurate. In fact, it's a very complicated system, but it's SB 30 that passed. You can look it up. That original bill was a bill proposed by the Department of Revenue with hardly anything in it. So it passes, and then it goes to conference committee, and that's where it gets changed. And I am not the chair of conference committee, but I am a member of conference. And I was taught, when you go to conference committee, you represent the Senate position. You don't represent, you never take off your hat for your constituents. You always represent your constituents. So I allow the debate. But for a chairman to stand up, to argue against the bill that they're carrying, and to vote against the bill they're carrying, that takes some intestinal fortitude, especially when the Senate president is yelling at you. Sorry.
So I have a question related to the tax thing as well. It's more or less, my curiosity is, so you say we have a tax committee, and then we have the conference committee where it went through. Why, and this isn't personally against you or anything, but why wouldn't this plan that is effectively considered a tax plan not going through our tax committee that we have set forward and going to a conference committee instead?
That's a question for leadership. I've never seen some of the stuff that's been going on in this legislative body. We've had gun bills come out of Ways and Means. We've had tax bill just came out of Fed and State. I'm on the Fed and State committee, and I think I'm the only one that knew what they were talking about. We have a tobacco tax, not a sales tax on tobacco. And so they're shuffling committee assignments to different committees in order to get the results that they want. It's quite disappointing. Yeah.
Why did you vote against the sales tax increase when your opponent voted to raise taxes in Kansas?
Why did I vote? And I was the vice chairman at that time. And I tell you, that takes some intestinal fortitude to do that. Because it was a $400 million increase to Kansans. I mean, if people don't realize, when you're a legislator, the decisions that you make impact people's lives. And it may not seem like a large dollar amount. We went from, I think it was we were at 6.125 at that time, and we went to 6.5. That's an increase that some households cannot handle. And we never cut the budget. We never even attempted to cut the budget that year. I had got put on Ways and Means the year after that. And no, I was on it then. I got put on it in 2015. And the chairman came back to me. I found $40 million that we could save. And he thanked me for that. But it was not an overall budget cut. So if you keep increasing spending and keep cutting taxes, you're going to have problems. Did that answer your question? That's why I didn't vote for it. It was not what my constituents wanted. I was representing my constituency. They did not elect me to increase their taxes. So
You spoke about broadening Kansans' access to broadband. So it's quite interesting because the recent legislation and the FCC kind of wants to do the same. So I just want to get your thoughts on what you think the recent legislation in the FCC regarding net neutrality, what the impact of that is for Kansas.
You know, free market, free enterprise, I think that's what that's about. I know there's some controversy over net neutrality. The market tends to take care of itself. So, yeah, that's where I stand. I don't know if you guys know the issue on net neutrality or, okay, most of you do, okay. Yeah. So I know it's a controversial issue, but what I'd like to do, and this is what I did when I first got elected to the House, I formed a coalition of legislators, a small group, to brainstorm on how we could have positive changes to the budget process. Our budget process promotes wasteful spending at the state, local, federal level, all of them. And so we came up with a couple of ideas. One of them was a 2-year budget cycle. And I won't go into all that, but that's what I want to do at the federal level. Form those coalitions to work on those issues so that we get some positive results for Kansas, and not just Kansas. I mean, we're in this together if we look at it. We've got Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, Colorado. If we build a coalition, we can get a stronger voice. And so that's what I would like to do in the legislature.
So you mentioned like we have a taxi problem, we also get a spending problem.
We do.
So what are your plans on cutting back on spending? Because if you're not bringing as much tax revenue and things are underfunded, so what do you plan on cutting like, to equal out the?
Well, one of the things that I proposed at the state level was what I proposed that we look at. We have a baseline budget now. Are you guys familiar with that? Meaning that we take the budget from last year and we baseline, that's our baseline to develop the budget for the next year. So instead of doing that, we need to take a hard look. A zero-based budget means you would start from zero money and justify all the expenses. That is probably not a reality. It needs to be done. It absolutely needs to be done. But what we ended up doing in the state was we couldn't get that legislation passed, so we passed legislation that would be performance-based budgeting. So what it does is each program, you have to say why the program exists, whether it's rules and regs, statute, or just made up somewhere, and where the funding comes from. We can take that and use that, apply that at the federal level also, to start finding efficiencies and duplications of programs in the federal government. Other things that we could do is our fraud and abuse. We do need to help those that cannot help themselves. We absolutely we're a very caring nation. But the fraud and the abuse of our federal programs and our state programs has to stop. One of the biggest abuses now is income tax returns, fraudulent income tax returns. With the technology now, why aren't we applying checks to make sure that the person is who they say they are filing the income tax return? One of the amendments that I got on at the state level was to do just that. When somebody files an application, we do an electronic check right away to make sure that's the person that says they are filing for the assistance. That saves the state money because they're not paying out that money to somebody fraudulently, and they're not trying to chase it later also. Just some common sense ideas. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
We have 2 more minutes, so
Sure.
one more question.
Sure.
Are we on time?
What do you guys?
2 more minutes.
You guys go
Two minutes? Well, let's see if you can do this. You know, if we look at this, you talked a lot about spending and along on the state, but you take a look at this budget deficit, And I'm sitting out here and talking about you can't cut taxes without cutting spending. The president just did that. The president, his deal that he's made with Democrats, is essentially continuing down the same road, reckless than even President Obama.
The president has actually done something a little different, though. They've incentivized U.S. companies to come back home. And
I'm all
That
for
is
the taxes. I'm all for repatriation. I'm all for reducing taxes, but I have heard no substantive talk on reducing government deficits. I've heard no talk on how we're going to reduce the size and scope of the federal government. And I think the president, just this past week, is implementing new taxes through his tariff plan. I have not heard from anyone, and I work for Congresswoman Jenkins, and this is the conversation I do with most people. How are we going to be able to cut spending? And I sit down here and I tell my...
I just gave you an example of how, it's not going to happen overnight. It's absolutely not going to happen overnight. But if we dig in and look at the duplication of programs that we have, if we stop the fraud and the abuse, if we deal with that, I mean, those are two major chunks of the budget. In fact, most people don't know the welfare benefits, the SNAP program, that is actually a USDA program. But if we would look at the fraud and the abuse, that is billions of dollars. Just for that program, that's how we start addressing the wasteful spending.
And I agree with that, there needs to be reforms. We're talking about, we're going to go back to $1 trillion deficits, an economy that's relatively strong in 2019. We can cut, discretionary spending all we want, but that's not where spending comes from, the bulk of it. We appropriate about 1/3 of our money is appropriated by the Congress. 2/3 is already taken away through entitlements, interest on our debt, and welfare programs. Are you going to be willing to reform entitlement programs of Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid?
I just spoke about the welfare programs, the fraud and the abuse. And it's with all of those programs, there's fraud and abuse. We've got individuals that are collecting Social Security that are no longer allowed. We need to have those checks and balances in so that we stop the fraud and the abuse.
That's going to make up $1 trillion.
I'm not saying that will take it all, but you've got to start chipping away. This is a mountain. It's an absolute mountain, and we've got to start moving one rock at a time, or we're never going to get there. We can't shut it down and do it all at once. That's unrealistic. But we can move this mountain working together and working as a team, and that's what I propose.
Okay, and we're done on time.
Thank you.
If you wanted to, if you're going to stick around after the meeting. Oh, okay.
No, that's okay. I'll stick around.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
If I could have Sam, I need you up here, the validation of elections as they happen. And then I'm going to appoint a parliamentarian as well.
I do have another meeting, so I'll come back another month, or you guys can call me or email me, and I have cards here if anyone wants. I apologize, but I do have another meeting this evening. So thank you very much.
There's a chair. Up one more.
Thank you, Caryn.
Thank you.
Bring that down.
Thanks.
And then lastly, before we start, can I have all the candidates